Commander Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the swirling colors of hyperspace through the reinforced viewport. The human fleet of 12 ships had been traveling for 6 days toward the Kepler 442 system, where intelligence reports suggested the Zephyrian Empire was massing forces for a major offensive against the Galactic Coalition. The Coalition had been humanity's ticket into the galactic community 3 years ago. After first contact with the peaceful Ethon Trade Federation, humans had proven themselves valuable allies through their unconventional tactics and stubborn determination. The Coalition, led by the ancient and wise Valdorian Council, had welcomed humanity as junior partners in their fight against the expanding Zephyrian Empire. "Commander, we're receiving a priority transmission from Coalition Command," reported Lieutenant Torres from the communication station. Her fingers danced across the holographic interface as she worked to decrypt the incoming message. Sarah nodded, her weathered face showing the strain of months of continuous combat operations. At 38, she had already become one of humanity's most respected military commanders, known for her ability to think outside the box when facing superior enemy forces. The crew called her Iron Sarah behind her back, though always with respect. "Put it through to my ready room," Sarah ordered. "Commander Morrison, you have a bridge." The ready room was Spartanly decorated, reflecting Sarah's no-nonsense personality. A single photo of Earth hung on one wall, while tactical displays covered the others. As the holographic projector activated, the blue-tinted figure of Admiral Kethvar materialized. The Valdorian's crystalline features seemed more angular than usual, and his normally calm demeanor appeared strained. "Commander Chin," Kethvar began, his translated voice carrying an undercurrent of urgency. "We have updated intelligence on the Zephyrian buildup in Kepler 442. The situation is more serious than we initially believed." Sarah leaned forward in her chair. "How serious, Admiral?" "Our scouts report at least 40 Zephyrian battlecruisers and twice as many support vessels. They're preparing to launch a coordinated assault on 3 coalition worlds simultaneously. We cannot allow them to achieve their objectives." The holographic display shifted to show a 3-dimensional map of the Kepler 442 system. Red markers indicated Zephyrian positions, while blue markers showed coalition forces. Sarah quickly noted that the coalition fleet was outnumbered nearly 3-1. "What are our orders, sir?" Sarah asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Your fleet will rendezvous with Coalition Strike Group Alpha at coordinates I'm transmitting now. Admiral Zethkol will be in overall command of the operation. You'll serve as his tactical advisor and lead the human contingent in the assault." Sarah frowned slightly. She had worked with Zethkol before and found the Morvanian admiral competent, but overly cautious. Still, orders were orders. "Understood, Admiral. When do we begin the operation?" 18 hours after rendezvous. The Zephyrians must not be allowed to launch their offensive. The future of the Coalition may depend on the success of this mission. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts. Something about the Admiral's manner had troubled her, but she couldn't quite identify what. After a moment, she returned to the bridge and ordered the fleet to adjust course for the rendezvous coordinates. 12 hours later, the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the designated coordinates. The sight that greeted them was impressive. Nearly 60 coalition warships of various designs floated in formation. Sleek Valdorian cruisers with their distinctive crystal hulls reflected starlight like prisms. Massive Morvanian battleships bristled with weapons arrays. Swift Ethon destroyers darted between the larger vessels like metallic fish. "Incoming transmission from the flagship," Torres reported. "On screen," Sarah ordered. Admiral Zethkol appeared on the main viewer, his reptilian features stern and unreadable. The Morvanians were an ancient warrior race, and Zethkol embodied their martial traditions. His scaled skin bore the ritual scars of a dozen campaigns, and his golden eyes held the weight of centuries of combat experience. "Commander Chun, welcome to Strike Group Alpha. Please bring your flagship alongside mine for a tactical briefing." As the Defiance maneuvered into position next to the Coalition flagship Retribution, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The positioning of the Coalition fleet seemed odd, almost as if they were preparing for something other than the planned assault. An hour later, Sarah sat in the Retribution's war room alongside Admiral Zethkol and the other senior Coalition commanders. The holographic display showed the Zephyrian positions in the Kepler 442 system, updated with real-time intelligence. The enemy has positioned their main battle group near the fourth planet, Zethkol explained, his clawed finger tracing the enemy formations. They expect us to attack directly, using conventional tactics. Instead, we will employ a more sophisticated approach. Sarah studied the display carefully. What exactly are you proposing, Admiral? Your human vessels will conduct a frontal assault on the main Zephyrian formation. This would draw their attention and commit their reserves to the battle. Meanwhile, the Coalition main force will remain hidden behind the system's asteroid belt and strike at their supply lines. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Admiral, that would leave my ships facing overwhelming odds. We'd be outnumbered 4-1. Human vessels have proven remarkably resilient in previous engagements, replied Admiral Veltar, a Valdorian commander whose crystal features seemed to shimmer with inner light. Your species' unpredictable nature often confuses enemy tactical computers. Besides, added another commander, insectoid Kitharin, whose mandibles clicked as she spoke, the assault need only last long enough to draw the Zephyrians into position. Once our main force strikes, you can withdraw. Sarah's military instincts screamed warnings, but she found herself in an impossible position. Refusing orders from a Coalition admiral would likely end her career and potentially damage humanity's standing in the galactic community. Yet the tactical situation seemed designed to sacrifice her ships. How long will my fleet need to maintain the assault? She asked finally. Approximately 30 minutes should be sufficient, Zethkol replied. Your orders are to engage the enemy at maximum range and maintain formation integrity. Avoid close combat unless absolutely necessary. Sarah nodded slowly, though every instinct told her this was wrong. Very well, Admiral. My ships will be ready to begin the assault on your signal. As she returned to the Defiance, Sarah's mind raced through possible alternatives. She could claim technical difficulties and delay the assault, but that would only postpone the inevitable. She could refuse orders outright, but that would create a diplomatic incident that could harm all of humanity. Back on her bridge, Sarah gathered her senior staff for a briefing. Commander Morrison, her executive officer, listened grimly as she outlined the battle plan. Chief Engineer Rodriguez shook his head in disbelief, while Tactical Officer Kim ran probability calculations that grew more dire with each simulation. Commander, Morrison said quietly, this feels like a suicide mission. I know, Sarah replied, but we have our orders. Make sure all ships are at full combat readiness. Double-check all defensive systems and prepare emergency jump coordinates. Are we expecting to retreat? Asked Kim. Sarah looked out at the Coalition fleet, still maintaining their formation near the asteroid belt. Let's just say I want to keep our options open. As the hours passed, Sarah found herself studying the tactical displays with growing unease. The more she examined the Coalition's plan, the more it looked like a deliberate attempt to eliminate the human fleet. The timing was too convenient, the positioning too perfect for betrayal. But why would the Coalition want to eliminate their human allies? Humanity had proven valuable in previous engagements, often turning the tide of battle through unconventional tactics. The answer came to her like a cold slap. Perhaps that was exactly the problem. Humans were unpredictable, difficult to control. They had a disturbing tendency to question orders and improvise solutions that defied conventional military doctrine. In the rigid hierarchy of Coalition politics, such independence could be seen as a threat rather than an asset. Commander, we're receiving the attack signal, Torres reported. Sarah took a deep breath and settled into her command chair. Around her, the bridge crew prepared for what might be their final battle. Whatever happened next, She was determined that humanity would not go quietly into the night. All ships, this is Commander Chun. Begin the assault. Stay sharp, stay alive, and remember, we're not just fighting for the Coalition today. We're fighting for humanity's future among the stars. The 12 human ships accelerated toward their destiny, unaware that they were flying into a trap that would change the course of galactic history forever. The human fleet emerged from the asteroid belt like hunting wolves, their engines burning bright against the darkness of space. The Zephyrian battle group hung in formation near the fourth planet of the Kepler 442 system, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that could tear a human destroyer apart with a single volley. Enemy contacts bearing 27 Mark V, reported Tactical Officer Kim. 43 capital ships confirmed, with escort formations spreading to intercept. Sarah watched the tactical display as red icons began moving toward her small fleet. The Zephyrians were taking the bait, just as Admiral Zeth Cole had predicted. Their massive battlecruisers turned ponderous toward the approaching humans while smaller vessels moved to flank positions. All ships maintain formation and open fire at maximum range, Sarah ordered. Remember, we just need to keep them busy. The space between the fleets erupted in brilliant flashes as human railguns and missile systems engaged Zephyrian energy weapons. The human ships danced between incoming fire, their superior maneuverability allowing them to avoid the worst of the enemy barrage. But even glancing hits from Zephyrian weapons caused significant damage. The Meridian reports shield generators down to 60%, reported Communications Officer Torres. The Vanguard has lost her port engine cluster. Sarah gritted her teeth as she watched her ships take punishment. The human vessels were holding their own for now, but against such overwhelming odds, they couldn't last long. Where was the Coalition main force? Torres, give me Admiral Zeth Cole, Sarah ordered. The communication took several minutes to establish, and when Zeth Cole's reptilian features appeared on the screen, Sarah could see explosions reflected in his golden eyes. Admiral, my fleet is taking heavy casualties. When will you begin your assault on their supply lines? Soon, Commander Chun. Maintain your current position. The enemy must commit more of their reserves before we can strike effectively. The transmission cut off before Sarah could respond. She stared at the empty screen, feeling a growing certainty that something was terribly wrong. The Coalition fleet should have been in position to attack 20 minutes ago. Commander, the Zephyrians are bringing up a second wave, Kim reported. 12 more battlecruisers moving to engage. Sarah's hands clenched on her command chair's armrests. The tactical situation was becoming impossible. Her 12 ships now faced 55 enemy vessels with no sign of Coalition support. Evasive maneuvers, all ships. Begin fighting retreat to coordinates 7 Alpha 9. The human fleet began a gradual withdrawal, still firing at the pursuing Zephyrians. But even as they retreated, Sarah noticed something that made her blood run cold. The Zephyrian formation wasn't the aggressive pursuit she would have expected. Instead, they were herding her ships toward a specific area of space. Torres, run a deep scan on our designated retreat coordinates, Sarah ordered. The communications officer's fingers flew over her console, and within moments her face paled. Commander, I'm detecting multiple Coalition vessels hidden behind sensor-dampening fields at those coordinates. They're powered down and running silent. The pieces fell into place with horrifying clarity. This wasn't a battle plan designed to defeat the Zephyrians. It was an execution designed to eliminate the human fleet. The Coalition had betrayed them. All ships, emergency maneuvers. Sarah barked. Do not proceed to designated coordinates. This is Commander Chen declaring condition black. We are operating under hostile command authority. The human ships scattered like startled birds, breaking their formation as they tried to escape the trap closing around them. But they were too late. The hidden Coalition vessels powered up their weapons and emerged from concealment, catching the human fleet in a devastating crossfire. The destroyer UES Courage exploded in a brilliant fireball as Coalition and Zephyrian weapons struck it simultaneously. The cruiser Determination lost its bow section to a Zephyrian torpedo while Coalition pulse weapons tore through her stern. "They're working together," whispered Commander Morrison, his face pale as he stared at the tactical display. "The Coalition and Zephyrians are coordinating their attacks." Sarah felt a rage unlike anything she had ever experienced. Humanity had trusted the Coalition, had fought, and died for their cause, and now they were being murdered by their supposed allies. "Open a channel to all Coalition vessels," Sarah commanded. When the channel was established, her voice carried across space with ice-cold fury. "Admiral Zethkol, this is Commander Chun. You have betrayed the trust of humanity and violated every principle the Coalition claims to represent. I demand an explanation." Zethkol's image appeared on the main screen, his reptilian features showing no emotion. "Commander Chun, you and your species have served your purpose. Humanity's unpredictable nature and aggressive tendencies have become a liability to Coalition stability. Your elimination has been deemed necessary for galactic peace." "You lying bastard," Sarah snarled. "We've bled for the Coalition. We've saved your worlds and your people. And for that service, your deaths will be recorded as heroic sacrifices in the fight against Zephyrian aggression," Zethkol replied coldly. "The galaxy will remember humanity as brave warriors who died defending Coalition ideals." The transmission ended, leaving Sarah staring at an empty screen. Around her, the bridge crew worked frantically to coordinate their surviving ship's defenses. They were down to 8 vessels now, surrounded by enemies on all sides. "Commander, incoming transmission from the Zephyrian flagship," Torres reported. Sarah almost refused the call, but curiosity won out. The alien face that appeared on screen was unlike any Zephyrian she had ever seen. Where most of the species were pale and angular, this one had darker features and bore elaborate scarring that suggested high rank. "Human Commander," the alien spoke in accented but clear English. "I am Warprime Kethzar of the Zephyrian Empire. I offer you and your surviving ships safe passage from this system." Sarah blinked in surprise. "Why would you help us?" "Because what transpires here violates the honor codes of warfare," Kethzar replied. "The Coalition approached us with an offer: eliminate the human fleet in exchange for territorial concessions. We agreed to this deception, but I find myself disturbed by the execution of such treachery." "So you're having second thoughts about murdering us?" "The Zephyrian Empire has many faults, Commander, but we do not typically align ourselves with those who betray their own allies. Such beings cannot be trusted even as enemies." Sarah looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and betrayed by those they had trusted most. But they were still alive, and where there was life, there was hope. "What are you proposing, Warprime?" "My ships will cease firing and withdraw from the engagement. In return, you'll have 1 hour to evacuate this system before Coalition reinforcements arrive. After that, you'll be on your own." It wasn't much, but it was more than Sarah had expected. "And what do you get out of this?" "The satisfaction of watching the Coalition explain to the galaxy how they lost an entire human fleet to Zephyrian treachery," Kethzar replied with something that might have been a smile. "The political implications should be entertaining." "Commander," Morrison whispered urgently, 3 more ships incoming. Coalition reinforcements." Sarah made her decision. "Warprime Kethzar, we accept your terms. And perhaps someday we could discuss more formal arrangements between our peoples." "Perhaps indeed, Commander Chun. Safe travels." The Zephyrian ships began withdrawing from the battle zone, their weapons powering down. The Coalition fleet, suddenly finding themselves without their supposed allies, seemed confused by the changing tactical situation. "All ships, emergency jump preparation," Sarah ordered. "We're getting out of here." As the surviving 8 human ships prepared for their escape jump, Sarah took one last look at the Coalition fleet that had betrayed them. Admiral Zethkol was hailing them frantically, probably trying to demand they stand and fight. She ignored the calls. Humanity had learned a harsh lesson today about the nature of galactic politics. But they had also gained something unexpected, a grudging respect from their former enemies and a burning desire for justice. "Jump coordinates locked in, Commander," reported the navigation officer. "Execute jump," Sarah commanded. The stars stretched into lines as the human ships fled into hyperspace, leaving behind the shattered remains of their trust in the Coalition. But they also left behind something else, the beginning of a legend that would spread across the galaxy. The Zephyrians would tell the story of human ships fighting against impossible odds and the Coalition's shocking betrayal. Pirates and smugglers would whisper of the humans' last stand and their miraculous escape. And in the hidden places of the galaxy, other species that chafed under Coalition rule would begin to wonder if perhaps the humans might offer an alternative. War Prime Kethzar watched the human ships disappear into hyperspace and smiled. He had made an enemy of the Coalition today, but perhaps he had also made something far more valuable, an ally who understood betrayal and would not forget it. In the depths of space, the first seeds of revolution had been planted. 6 months after the betrayal at Kepler 442, Commander Sarah Chun stood in the cargo bay of the converted freighter Lucky Strike, addressing a crowd of beings that would have been unthinkable just a year ago. Humans, Zephyrians, Kithran exiles, rogue Ethons, and dozens of other species filled the space, all united by one common purpose. They had been betrayed, oppressed, or abandoned by the Coalition. The Lucky Strike orbited a rogue planet in an unmapped system, one of several hidden bases that humanity had established since their escape from Coalition space. The ship itself was a testament to human ingenuity and desperation, a cobbled-together command vessel that looked like it should fall apart, but somehow held together through sheer stubbornness and engineering creativity. 6 months ago, the Coalition showed their true face, Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the bay's acoustics. They revealed that their so-called principles of justice and freedom only apply to species that know their place and follow orders without question. A rumble of agreement passed through the assembled crowd. Many of them bore the scars of Coalition peacekeeping operations or had lost friends and family to Coalition policies that prioritize stability over justice. Since then, we've been building something new, not just a resistance, but a true alternative. The Free World Alliance stands for the principle that every sapient species has the right to determine its own destiny. In the front row, War Prime Kethzar nodded approvingly. The Zephyrian had become an unlikely ally, bringing with him a dozen ships and crews that had grown disgusted with their empire's collaboration with the Coalition. His presence had been crucial in convincing other species that this wasn't simply human revenge, but a genuine movement for galactic freedom. Today, we take the next step, Sarah continued. Intelligence reports indicate that the Coalition is preparing to strip mine the Zirian system, displacing 3 million Hegemari refugees in the process. The Hegemari have been living on those worlds for 2 years since the Coalition forcibly relocated them from their homeworld. The Hegemari delegation in the audience shifted uncomfortably. They were a peaceful agricultural species whose homeworld had been seized by the Coalition under the pretext of strategic necessity during the ongoing Zephyrian conflict. The irony that Zephyrians were now fighting alongside them to protect their new homes was not lost on anyone. The Coalition believes they can act with impunity because they think we're scattered and weak, Sarah said, her voice growing harder. They think wrong. Operation Homecoming begins in 72 hours. We're going to show the galaxy that the Free World Alliance isn't just a name. We're a force to be reckoned with. After the briefing, Sarah made her way to the Lucky Strike's modified bridge, where her core staff was finalizing operational details. The bridge was a cramped affair that mixed human technology with salvaged alien systems, creating a chaotic but effective command center. Commander Morrison looked up from a holographic display showing the Zirian system. The Coalition has a significant force guarding the mining operation. 2 heavy cruisers, 6 destroyers, and a planetary defense grid, plus civilian mining ships that we'll need to avoid. What about evacuation procedures? asked Chief Engineer Rodriguez, who had become the Alliance's unofficial logistics coordinator. 3 million Hegemari can't be moved quickly, especially with their agricultural equipment and livestock. War Prime Kethzar stepped forward, his scarred features thoughtful. My ships can provide heavy cover during the evacuation, but we'll need to neutralize the defense grid quickly. A prolonged battle will result in civilian casualties. I've been working on that problem, said a new voice from the bridge's engineering station. Dr. Elena Vasquez had been a civilian xenoarchaeologist before the betrayal, but her expertise in alien technology had made her invaluable to the Alliance. I've been studying the Coalition's standard defense grid protocols. They have a critical vulnerability in their power distribution network. Sarah moved to examine Vasquez's findings. The display showed a complex schematic of the Xerian system's orbital defenses. The entire grid is powered by a central fusion plant on the largest moon, Vasquez explained. If we can disable that facility, the whole defensive network goes dark. No shields, no weapons, no sensors. That's a big if, Morrison pointed out. The power plant will be heavily defended. Not necessarily, Kethzar interjected. Zephyrian intelligence indicates that the Coalition has been cutting corners on outer system defenses to reinforce their core worlds. The moon facility likely has minimal security. Sarah studied the tactical display, her mind racing through possibilities. What kind of force would we need to take out the power plant? A small infiltration team could do it, Vasquez replied. The plant's control systems are standardized across Coalition space. I can reprogram them to overload the fusion reactors. That would cause significant radiation damage to the moon's environment, Rodriguez pointed out. It's an uninhabited moon, Kethzar said with a shrug. And radiation can be cleaned up. Dead Hegemari cannot be brought back to life. Sarah made her decision. We'll proceed with the power plant assault. Dr. Vasquez, you'll lead the infiltration team with a squad of my best people. War Prime, your ships will handle the heavy lifting once the defenses are down. Commander Morrison, coordinate with the Hegemari representatives on evacuation priorities. As her staff dispersed to begin preparations, Sarah found herself alone with her thoughts. The plan was risky, but it was also exactly the kind of operation that could establish the Alliance's credibility across the galaxy. Success would prove that the Coalition was not invincible, that their carefully maintained image of order and stability was an illusion. 3 days later, Sarah watched from the Lucky Strike's bridge as the operation unfolded. The infiltration team had successfully reached the moon's power facility and was working to disable the defensive grid. Meanwhile, the Alliance fleet hung at the edge of the system, ready to move in once the defenses were neutralized. Infiltration team reports they're inside the facility, Torres announced. Dr. Vasquez estimates 15 minutes to complete the sabotage. On the tactical display, Sarah could see the Coalition fleet maintaining position around the Hegemari colony worlds. They seemed unaware of the approaching threat, confident in their defensive preparations. War Prime, are your ships ready? Sarah asked. Kethzar nodded from his position at the tactical station. My warriors are eager to test Coalition resolve. We have not forgotten their treachery at Kepler 442. Neither have we, Sarah replied grimly. The minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness. Every moment the infiltration team remained on the moon increased the chance of discovery. If the Coalition detected the sabotage before it could be completed, the entire operation would collapse. Contact from Dr. Vasquez, Torres reported. The power plant is set to overload in 30 seconds. All teams are clear of the facility. Sarah activated the fleet communications channel. All ships, prepare for immediate jump to combat coordinates. This is for every species the Coalition has betrayed, every world they've stripped bare, and every life they've discarded in the name of order. The space around the moon's power facility erupted in a brilliant flash as the fusion reactors overloaded. The explosion was visible from across the system, and within moments the orbital defense grid began shutting down as power levels dropped to zero. Defense grid is offline. Morrison reported with satisfaction. All Coalition ships are running on emergency power only. Execute jump, Sarah commanded. The Alliance fleet materialized in the heart of the Xerian system like an avenging angel. 47 ships of various designs and origins, all bearing the new emblem of the Free World Alliance, a broken chain against a field of stars. The Coalition forces were caught completely off guard. Their heavy cruisers tried to bring their main weapons to bear, but without the defense grid's sensor support, they were fighting blind. The Alliance ships, led by Kethzar's Zephyrian battlecruisers, tore into the Coalition formation with devastating effectiveness. Coalition Cruiser Righteous is breaking apart, reported Tactical Officer Kim. The destroyers are attempting to retreat. Let them go, Sarah ordered. Our objective is the evacuation, not total destruction. Signal the Hegemari transports to begin loading operations. The battle was over within an hour. 2 Coalition cruisers destroyed, for destroyers either destroyed or fled, and the mining operation completely neutralized. More importantly, the Hegemari evacuation was proceeding smoothly with Alliance ships providing cover and assistance. As Sarah watched the massive agricultural transports loading families and equipment, she received an unexpected communication. Admiral Kethvar's crystal features appeared on screen, his expression unreadable. Commander Chun, you have committed an act of war against the Coalition. Surrender immediately, and your people will be treated according to interstellar law. Sarah almost laughed. Admiral, you lost the right to invoke interstellar law when you betrayed us at Kepler 442. As for surrender, I have a better suggestion. She gestured to the tactical display showing the Alliance fleet and the ongoing evacuation. The Free World's Alliance offers amnesty to any Coalition personnel who wish to join us. We fight for freedom, not revenge. Your own crews can see the difference between protecting mining profits and saving refugee families. Kethvar's crystalline features hardened. You cannot oppose the entire Coalition, Commander. This rebellion will be crushed. Maybe, Sarah admitted. But every action we take shows the galaxy that the Coalition can be defeated. Every world we liberate proves that your version of order isn't the only option. How many species do you think are watching this transmission right now, wondering if they too might choose freedom? The transmission cut off, but Sarah's words have been broadcast across the system on all frequencies. Within hours, they would spread across the galactic communication networks, carrying the message of the Free World's Alliance to every corner of known space. As the last Hegemari transport cleared the system under Alliance escort, Sarah allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. They had struck a blow against Coalition tyranny and saved 3 million lives in the process. But more importantly, they had proven that the Coalition was not invincible. War Prime Kethzar approached her station, his scarred features showing what might have been approval. A successful operation, Commander. The galaxy has taken notice. This is just the beginning, Sarah replied, watching the stars stretch into hyperspace as the fleet jumped to safety. The Coalition has spent centuries convincing the galaxy that their way is the only way. It's time to show them they're wrong. In the depths of space, revolution was spreading like wildfire, and at its heart burned the fury of humanity betrayed but not broken. 2 years after the Xerian liberation, the Free World Alliance had grown from a desperate band of refugees into a formidable galactic power. Commander Sarah Chun, now bearing the title of Supreme Admiral, stood in the war room of the massive battle station Humanity's Fury, studying intelligence reports that would have seemed impossible just months earlier. The battle station itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering, combining human ingenuity with Zephyrian heavy construction techniques, Kithran precision electronics, and Hegemari agricultural systems that allowed the station to be completely self-sufficient. At 15 kilometers long and housing over 2 million beings, it served as both military headquarters and symbol of what the Alliance represented. Admiral, the latest recruitment figures, reported Captain Torres, now Sarah's intelligence chief. She had adapted well to her expanded role, building an information network that spanned half the galaxy. 17 more worlds have formally petitioned to join the Alliance this month. The coalition is hemorrhaging members. Sarah nodded as she reviewed the holographic display, showing Alliance territory. What had started as a handful of hidden bases now encompassed over 200 star systems. The red marking coalition space seemed to shrink daily as more species chose freedom over enforced order. "What's the situation with the Talnari uprising?" Sarah asked, focusing on a cluster of systems near the galactic core. War Prime Kethzar, now bearing the title of Alliance Defense Coordinator, stepped forward. His position represented the successful integration of former enemies into the Alliance command structure. The Talnari have successfully liberated 6 of their 17 occupied worlds. Coalition forces are retreating to fortified positions around their primary industrial centers. The Talnari were one of the coalition's founding members, observed Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had become the Alliance's Technology Development Director. Their rebellion has sent shockwaves through coalition space. If they can successfully break away, it will prove that even core worlds can choose independence. Sarah studied the strategic implications. The Talnari were an advanced technological species whose worlds produced much of the coalition's most sophisticated equipment. Losing them would be a devastating blow to coalition military capabilities. "What kind of support are they requesting?" Sarah asked. "Weapons, primarily," Kethzar replied. "Also technical advisors for asymmetric warfare. The coalition has superior numbers, but the Talnari believe they can win through superior tactics." "They're probably right," said a new voice from the room's entrance. General Marcus Webb, formerly a colonel in Earth's military, now commanded the Alliance's rapid response forces. His weathered face bore new scars from the liberation campaigns, but his eyes held the fire of someone who had found his true calling. "The Coalition's biggest weakness is their rigid command structure," Webb continued as he joined the group around the holographic display. "They're trained to fight conventional wars against external enemies, not rebellions by their own member species. Every victory we win teaches more worlds that the Coalition can be beaten." Sarah considered the strategic picture. The Alliance now faced a critical decision point. They could continue their cautious approach of supporting individual rebellions, or they could make a dramatic gesture that would accelerate the Coalition's collapse. "What's the status of Operation Thunderbolt?" Sarah asked. Webb's expression grew serious. "All preparations are complete. We have infiltration teams positioned around 12 Coalition core worlds, ready to simultaneously disable their orbital defense networks. Follow-up forces are standing by to provide support to local resistance movements. The risk is enormous," Torres pointed out. "If even one of the operations fails, the Coalition will know we're coming. They'll be able to reinforce their remaining strongholds." "The potential reward justifies the risk," Kethzar argued. 12 core worlds liberated simultaneously would break Coalition morale. Many of their remaining territories would surrender without fighting. Sarah walked to the room's main viewport, looking out at the Alliance fleet assembled around humanity's fury. Hundreds of ships of dozens of different designs, all flying under the banner of freedom. Human destroyers flew alongside Zephyrian battlecruisers, while Kithran fighters practiced maneuvers with Ethon interceptors. "There's another factor we need to consider," Sarah said finally. "Intelligence reports suggest the Coalition is developing a new weapon system, something they're calling the Pacification Array." The room fell silent. Rumors of a Coalition superweapon had been circulating for months, but concrete intelligence had been elusive. "What kind of weapon?" Vasquez asked, her scientific curiosity overriding her caution. "We're not entirely sure," Torres admitted. "Our sources indicate it's some kind of neural suppression system that can affect entire populations simultaneously. The theory is that it could instantly pacify rebellious worlds by suppressing their will to resist." The implications were staggering. Such a weapon could end the rebellion without firing a shot, turning free-thinking beings into docile servants of the Coalition. "How close are they to deployment?" Webb asked. "Unknown, but our intelligence suggests they're planning field tests within the next few months," Torres replied. "If the weapon proves effective, they'll use it to reclaim lost territory." Sarah turned back to the group, her decision made. "Then, we can't wait any longer. Operation Thunderbolt goes active in 72 hours. We'll hit the Coalition core worlds before they can deploy their new weapon. Admiral Vasquez said hesitantly, "There's one more thing. The weapon tests are reportedly being conducted on human prisoners from our lost ships." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. For 2 years, she had wondered about the fate of crew members who had been captured or left behind during various operations. The thought that they were being used as test subjects for a mind control weapon filled her with cold rage. "In that case, Operation Thunderbolt has a secondary objective," Sarah said, her voice deadly calm. "We find those prisoners, and we bring them home." Over the next 3 days, the Alliance mobilized for its largest operation yet. Fleets positioned themselves at jump points throughout Coalition space, while infiltration teams made final preparations. The success or failure of the next few hours would determine whether the galaxy would embrace freedom or sink back into enforced conformity. Sarah stood on the bridge of humanity's fury as the countdown reached its final moments. Around her, officers from a dozen different species worked together with the efficiency born of shared purpose. The diversity that the Coalition saw as chaos had become the Alliance's greatest strength. "All infiltration teams report ready," Torres announced. "Fleet commanders standing by for the go signal." Sarah took a deep breath, thinking of the long journey that had brought them to this moment. From the betrayal at Kepler 442 to the liberation of Zirion to the dozens of successful operations that had followed, each step had led to this critical juncture. "Signal all teams," Sarah commanded. "Operation Thunderbolt is a go. For freedom, for justice, and for every being who refuses to bow to tyranny." Across Coalition space, carefully placed explosive charges detonated simultaneously at 12 different worlds. Orbital defense platforms went dark as their power supplies were severed. Communication networks crashed as key relay stations were destroyed. In the space of 10 minutes, the Coalition's most heavily defended worlds found themselves as vulnerable as frontier colonies. The Alliance fleets struck like lightning, jumping directly into the heart of Coalition space. At Valder Prime, capital of the ancient Valdorian civilization, Quetzar's heavy cruisers smashed through the weakened defenses while liberation forces landed to free political prisoners. At Morven Central, General Webb's rapid assault troops secured the government complex before local authorities could organize resistance. The sight of humans and Zephyrians fighting side by side sent shockwaves through Coalition leadership. At Kythos Major, Alliance scientists worked to decrypt Coalition research files while protecting the planet's vast libraries from destruction. The knowledge preserved there would help dozens of species reclaim their cultural heritage. But the most important target was Xeris Beta, where intelligence suggested the pacification array was being developed. Sarah personally led the assault on that world, determined to find her missing people and destroy the weapon that threatened galactic freedom. As Alliance forces secured key facilities across Xeris Beta, Sarah's search teams located the research complex where human prisoners were being held. What they found that would haunt them forever. Dozens of humans floated in suspension pods, their minds subjected to constant neural manipulation as Coalition scientists tested different versions of their compliance weapon. Some victims had been driven insane by the experiments. Others had been reduced to vegetative states. But a core group had somehow maintained their sanity and their defiance. Among them was Lieutenant Commander Jackson Hayes, Sarah's former tactical officer who had been captured during a raid 6 months earlier. When a medical team revived him, his first words were a defiant curse aimed at his captors. "Commander Hayes," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion, "welcome back to the fight." As Alliance forces destroyed the research facility and its horrific experiments, Sarah allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. They had struck a devastating blow against Coalition tyranny while rescuing their own people. But she knew the war was far from over. The Coalition would not accept defeat easily. They would marshal their remaining forces and strike back with everything they had. But the galaxy had seen that even the Coalition's core worlds could be liberated. The revolution had reached the point of no return. Standing among the ruins of the Pacification Array Laboratory, Sarah broadcast a message that would be heard across known space. The age of enforced conformity is ending. The age of freedom has begun. To every being who dreams of determining their own destiny, the Alliance stands ready to fight alongside you. Together, we will build a galaxy where diversity is celebrated, not feared, and where the only authority that matters is the consent of the governed. The message sparked uprisings on 100 worlds as species that had endured coalition rule for centuries finally found the courage to claim their freedom. The revolution was spreading like wildfire, and at its heart stood humanity, betrayed, bloodied, but unbroken. 5 years after the betrayal that started it all, Supreme Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the Alliance flagship Unbroken Spirit, watching the final battle of the Galactic Liberation War unfold in the space above Valder Prime. The Coalition's last stronghold was crumbling under the combined assault of over 3,000 Alliance vessels, representing more than 50 different species. The war had raged for 3 years since Operation Thunderbolt shattered Coalition control over their core worlds. What followed had been a bloody campaign as the Coalition threw everything they had into maintaining their grip on power. Entire star systems had been devastated. Billions of beings had died. But, in the end, the promise of freedom had proven stronger than the fear of order. Admiral, the Coalition High Council is requesting terms for surrender, reported Captain Torres. The years of war had aged them all, but Torres still carried herself with the dignity that had made her invaluable as both intelligence chief and diplomatic liaison. After everything they've done, they want to negotiate? Asked War Prime Kethzar. The Zephyrian's scarred features showed the strain of commanding Alliance forces through countless battles. He had become not just an ally, but a true friend, proving that even former enemies could find common ground in the fight for freedom. Sarah considered the request. The Coalition leadership had overseen centuries of oppression, had betrayed their own allies, and had been willing to use mind control weapons to maintain their power. Part of her wanted to see them face justice for their crimes. But another part, the part that had learned hard lessons about the cost of vengeance, recognized an opportunity to break the cycle of violence that had plagued the galaxy for too long. What terms are they offering? Sarah asked. Complete surrender of all Coalition military forces, recognition of Alliance authority over former Coalition territory, and cooperation in transitioning to the new government structure, Torres replied. In exchange, they're requesting amnesty for political leaders and protection for Coalition loyalists. Amnesty. General Webb's voice carried barely controlled anger. The veteran soldier bore the scars of dozens of battles fought to free oppressed worlds. After what they did to our people, after the experiments, the massacres, the forced relocations, Sarah understood his rage. She felt it too, burning in her chest like a flame that had never been extinguished since that day at Kepler 442. But leadership meant making hard decisions based on what was best for the future, not what felt good in the moment. What's the military situation? She asked, focusing on practical considerations. Coalition forces are down to their last reserves, reported Admiral Chen Wei-Ming, Sarah's strategic coordinator and no relation despite the shared surname. The former Earth Navy officer had proven instrumental in coordinating the complex logistics of multi-species warfare. They have perhaps 50 functional warships remaining, scattered across a dozen systems. Their industrial base is completely destroyed. Population centers under Coalition control. Sarah continued. Approximately 2 billion beings across 37 worlds, Dr. Vasquez answered. As Alliance Civilian Affairs Director, she had become responsible for the massive task of integrating liberated populations into the new galactic order. Most are non-combatants who simply want the war to end. Sarah walked to the viewport, looking down at Valder Prime below. The planet's crystal cities still gleamed in the sunlight, though many bore scars from the ongoing siege. It was beautiful and ancient, representing thousands of years of Valdorian civilization. Admiral, came a new voice. Commander Jackson Hayes approached from the bridge elevator. Sarah's former tactical officer had recovered from his ordeal in coalition captivity and had become one of her most trusted advisors. His experience as a prisoner had given him unique insights into coalition psychology. "The prisoners we liberated from coalition research facilities," Hayes said quietly. "What happened to us wasn't just about weapons development. It was about understanding how to break the human spirit. They studied us because they couldn't comprehend how we kept fighting after being betrayed." Sarah nodded, remembering the reports from the liberated research facilities. The coalition had been genuinely puzzled by humanity's refusal to accept defeat. They had expected humans to retreat to Earth and never venture into space again after Kepler 442. "They still don't understand," Hayes continued. "They think this war is about revenge, about humans wanting to rule the galaxy like they did. They can't conceive that we actually mean what we say about freedom and self-determination." "So what are you suggesting?" Sarah asked. "Give them a chance to prove they can learn," Hayes replied. "Accept their surrender, but make them work to earn forgiveness. Not just from us, but from every species they oppressed." The idea had merit. Simply executing coalition leaders would create martyrs and potentially fuel future conflicts. But making them actively participate in rebuilding what they had destroyed might actually lead to genuine change. "There's another factor to consider," Torres added. "Our intelligence networks report that several minor powers outside former coalition space are watching to see how we handle victory. If we're seen as vengeful conquerors, they might form defensive alliances against us." Sarah made her decision. "Open a channel to the Coalition High Council. I'll speak with them directly." The main screen activated to show the interior of the Coalition's emergency command bunker deep beneath Valder Prime surface. The assembled leaders looked tired and defeated, their crystalline features dim with despair. Admiral Kethvar, the architect of humanity's betrayal, sat at the head of the council table. "Admiral Chen," Kethvar began, his translated voice carrying none of its former authority. "We offer complete surrender in exchange for reasonable terms." "Reasonable terms?" Sarah's voice carried ice-cold fury. "You betrayed us at Kepler 442. You used our people as test subjects for mind control weapons. You ordered the massacre of civilian refugees who wanted freedom. What part of that was reasonable?" The coalition leaders shifted uncomfortably, but Kethvar held her gaze. "We acted according to our understanding of galactic stability. We believed that enforced order was preferable to chaotic freedom. And now we have seen the cost of our choices," Kethvar admitted. Perhaps there are alternatives we did not consider." Sarah leaned forward, her expression stern. "The Alliance will accept your surrender under the following conditions: complete disarmament of all coalition military forces, full cooperation in transitioning governmental authority to elected representatives chosen by each world's population, reparations to be paid to species harmed by coalition policies, with the work to be performed by former coalition leaders personally." She paused, letting the implications sink in. "Additionally, former coalition leaders will serve as advisors in the new government structure, but only after being confirmed by representatives of the species they previously oppressed. You will earn your positions through service, not inherit them through privilege." "And if we refuse?" asked another council member. Sarah gestured toward the viewport showing Alliance fleets surrounding Valder Prime. "Then, this war continues until there's nothing left to surrender. The choice is yours." The Coalition Council huddled in urgent discussion. After several minutes, Kethvar turned back to the screen. "We accept your terms, Admiral Chun. The Coalition formally surrenders to the Free Worlds Alliance." As the surrender was being finalized, Sarah found herself surrounded by her senior staff. The moment they had all worked toward for 5 years had finally arrived, but it felt strangely anticlimactic. "What happens now?" asked Torres. "Now comes the hard part," Sarah replied. "Fighting a war is simple compared to building a lasting peace. We have to prove that our way actually works." Over the following months, the transition from wartime alliance to peacetime government proved every bit as challenging as Sarah had predicted. The newly established Galactic Senate included representatives from over 200 species, many of whom had never participated in interstellar politics before. Debates raged over everything from trade policies to territorial boundaries to the fundamental question of how much authority the central government should have versus individual worlds. Some discussions devolved into arguments that threatened to fragment the alliance. But gradually a new order emerged. The principle of voluntary association became the foundation of the new galactic community. Worlds could choose their level of participation, from full membership to simple trade partnerships. No species was forced to conform to standards that conflicted with their values, as long as they respected the rights of others. Former coalition leaders, true to the surrender terms, found themselves working alongside their former victims to rebuild damaged worlds and displace populations. Some, like Admiral Kethvar, seemed to genuinely embrace the opportunity for redemption. Others remained bitter and resentful, but were gradually marginalized as new leaders emerged. War Prime Kethzar established a new Zephyrian republic based on democratic principles, though he maintained military traditions that emphasized honor and duty. Dr. Vasquez led the creation of a galactic university system that preserved the knowledge and cultures of thousands of species. General Webb founded the Alliance Defense Force, a volunteer military organization dedicated to protecting members from external threats. Sarah herself declined offers to become the first elected president of the Galactic Senate, choosing instead to serve as admiral of the Alliance fleet. She felt more comfortable in a military role, and the galaxy still faced external threats from powers beyond the former coalition's borders. 10 years after the betrayal at Kepler, 442, Sarah stood once again on the bridge of a warship, this time the exploration vessel New Horizons. But instead of preparing for battle, she was leading humanity's first expedition beyond the galaxy's rim, searching for new civilizations to contact and potentially invite into the galactic community. Captain Torres to the bridge came the announcement over the ship's communication system. Torres had chosen to return to exploration after the war, saying she had seen enough of politics to last several lifetimes. Admiral, we're detecting artificial signals from the next star system, Torres reported as she arrived on the bridge. Multiple sources possibly indicating a spacefaring civilization. Sarah smiled, feeling the familiar excitement of first contact. Excellent. Prepare a standard greeting package and take us in. Let's see if we can make some new friends. As the New Horizons adjusted course toward the unknown civilization, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought them here. Humanity had been betrayed, bloodied, and nearly broken. But they had refused to surrender their ideals, had built something better from the ashes of betrayal. The galaxy was no longer ruled by fear and enforced conformity. Instead, it was governed by hope, cooperation, and the radical idea that every being deserved the chance to determine their own destiny. Behind them, across thousands of worlds, billions of beings lived in freedom because a small group of humans had refused to accept that betrayal was the natural order of things. They had taken their rage and their pain and transformed it into something greater. A galaxy where diversity was celebrated, where cooperation was voluntary, and where the only authority that mattered was the consent of the governed. In the end, humanity had not just survived betrayal. They had used it as the foundation for building something the galaxy had never seen before, a true democracy among the stars. And as the New Horizons headed toward its next adventure, Sarah knew that this was only the beginning of what they could accomplish together.